In this episode, we talk about a new regulation by the Delhi government to curb air pollution. We also talk about the Indian film Homebound making it to the shortlist for the Best International Feature Film category at the 98th Academy Awards. But we begin today by talking about the newly introduced Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajeevika Mission Gramin Bill 2025, which proposes to repeal and replace the MGNREGA Act 2005. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. On Tuesday in the Lok Sabha, Union Agriculture Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan introduced a bill titled the Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajeevika Mission Gramin Bill 2025, more commonly being referred to as the VBG Ramji Bill.
माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं प्रस्ताव करता हूं कि मुझे विकसित भारत गारंटी फॉर रोजगार एंड आजीविका मिशन ग्रामीण VB जी राम जी विकसित भारत जी राम जी बिल 2025 को सभा में पूरा स्थापित करने की अनुमति दी जाए.
The bill proposes to repeal and replace the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005, under which the government is mandated to provide up to 100 days of guaranteed employment in a year at a minimum wage to any rural household that seeks work. Now, the first big change that stands out in this new bill, of course, is the name. From having Mahatma Gandhi in its title, the new bill now includes Ram in the middle, a move that opposition has been quick to criticize.
लेकिन मैं फिर दोहरा रहा हूं कि बापू हमारे दिलों में बसते हैं, उनका हम पूरा सम्मान करते हैं. और बापू ही कहते थे राम राज, राम हमारे रोम रोम में रमे हैं, राम हमारी हर सांस में बसे हैं. बिना राम के ये देश नहीं जाना जाता. पता नहीं क्यों जी राम जी नाम आ गया तो ये भड़क गए. महात्मा गांधी स्वयं राम राज्य की स्थापना की बात करते थे और उनके अंतिम शब्द भी हे राम थे.
Now, renaming schemes in Hindi and removing references to members of the Nehru-Gandhi family is something we've seen several times under this government. But beyond the title, it is important to note that the bill departs from MGNREGA in several crucial ways. These include placing much higher financial burden on states, changing how funds are allocated, and introducing a pause in the scheme during peak agricultural seasons. Critics of this bill point out that while MGNREGA is a rights-based, demand-driven scheme, the proposed law shifts to a supply-led and budget-capped program that will end up hurting some of the most marginalized groups in the country. To understand the possible implications of this new law, my colleague Shashank Bhargav speaks to the Indian Express's Udit Misra, who writes on economy for the paper.
Udit, just to set the context for this conversation, could you talk about just how important MGNREGA has been for the poor in the country?
So, when NREGA came up as a law, it was not without any precedence. India has had a long history where governments have at different times run food for work programs, and they were typically done when there was distress in the economy, or at least in sections of the economy. So say if Rajasthan was going through a drought, then the government would run some kind of a food for work programs. And that's how NREGA sort of built up over time. And the idea behind NREGA is not just, as many people understand, is not just about a rural guarantee, jobs guarantee program. That is how it is understood. But having tracked this for a very long time, and one of my old professors, Jean Drèze, was the frame person who made this framework. The idea behind NREGA was there was a larger vision of how rural democracy has to work. So the whole rights-based approach was part of it, wherein you said that, the people have certain rights in this country and they need to assert those rights. And so NREGA was going to be a vehicle for not just about getting jobs, but also for rejuvenating the Panchayati Raj institutions. Because you would go and hold the local panchayat and the sarpanch responsible for getting the job, for ensuring that that job is of some good caliber, which improves the economy or provides some kind of improvement in the rural economy. So it was supposed to bring about a participative change in the country. And people forget that NREGA came about at a time when India was just hitting the best phase of India's economic growth, which we saw the fastest growth we have ever seen between 2004 and 2009, before the global financial crisis sort of derailed everything. The idea was also that even when we are growing fast, and especially when we are not growing fast, there are large sections of this country who do not benefit from the growth process. And there is a need for a safety net for those people, a requirement for the government to provide some ways to bring those along, those large masses along. You cannot let a large section, and an increasingly large section, just be out of the growth process, because growth happens in a very iniquitous manner, and that is the nature of growth.
So basically, one, understanding that there are a large number of people in the country that require that safety net, and also looking at it in a way that, these people do have the right to be employed, even if they're unskilled.
Yes, and you have to understand that the idea is that it's not like we are giving people a right which is so unreasonable that they can just want a job every day. There is a certain basic minimum set that, okay, you'll get this much amount of jobs. So one house, for every household, 100 days of labor. Now, there can be 4 people in the household, but only 100 days of labor is available. That kind of a thing. And in the 20 years now that NREGA has been there, you recall every crisis period in India's economy, and every time the first go-to measure was either providing direct food, free food, through the Right to Food Act that was passed, or provide jobs and some kind of a rural jobs guarantee, and through that push the money. Even demonetization, when we had the distress immediately after announcing demonetization, the machines were not working, cash had totally gone away, ATMs were not functioning. The only way the government could actually tide over that tough period was through providing jobs and food. Same happened with the COVID pandemic. So, NREGA has served a large purpose. It has had a checkered history in terms of what it could have done, and that's a separate debate. But by itself, it had a role to play, and it has served that purpose.
Okay, now, like we mentioned, this new bill will replace MGNREGA. And this is also a jobs guarantee scheme, but it differs from MGNREGA in a number of different ways. One is that its funding will be shared by the center and the states. The second is that the center will decide the kind of budget that will be allotted to states. And also the other thing is that now the number of guaranteed job days have gone up from 100 to 125. Now, as someone who has reported and written about MGNREGA for a number of years, what immediately stands out to you about this bill?
So the most fundamental difference now is that, as against a demand-driven program that NREGA was, which is to say that if more and more people asked for jobs, you had to provide jobs, you had to get them to do something. And if you could not provide that, you had to provide some compensation. So that was the broad idea. And it was universal. If I was living in a rural area and if I didn't have any job, then I could actually approach it. It was universal. It didn't say who could get that facility and who couldn't. Everybody could get it. So the idea was that only those who are distressed enough will actually go for that kind of physical hard labor, unskilled labor.
Right. So, for example, if 90,000 people in a village in Bihar were demanding jobs under the Act, they will be offered jobs or will be paid compensation because the Act guarantees 100 days of employment to each household. Now, in this new bill, it actually guarantees 125 days instead of 100, which on the face of it is a good thing, but that's not actually what stands out to you about it.
Yeah, it does not, because I think these numbers are, now pointless at one level, because the nature of the promise, the government is no longer looking at this as a demand-driven program. Now it is looking at it as a supply-driven program. That the government will say, this is the amount of money allocated. I'm allocating for Uttar Pradesh, this much for Chhattisgarh, this much for Bihar, based on whatever data they have or whatever calculation they make. And you will have to then run the program within that money. If the state finds that there is more demand, then the state government will have to shell out more. So at one level, this is less about people's demand. This is now center minimizing its own expenditure and saying, I will only go this far and rest is state government's problem. So it is less about a right of the people to demand a job and get that or a compensation. And it's more about the government saying, okay, this is how much I will pay for this program, and rest the state governments will have to handle. And so there's a fundamental difference. There's no point saying 125 days or 150 days if you're not going to provide money for that. And this is a problem that we've had in NREGA also, where central governments did not allocate enough money, and over time, if a poor person is not getting paid, then they will stop going to that NREGA center demanding job, because they don't have the cushion to just keep going every day there working and not getting paid. If they are demanding a job and you don't have a job to give, then after 15 days you're supposed to give compensation. But if you do not do that, then they will stop asking for that job. So this was a problem in NREGA also, that it was not being run properly. But now what was a flaw has been made a feature.
Right, so in that example we mentioned earlier where 90,000 people were demanding jobs, now under MGNREGA, hopefully there would have been a budget for that. But now under this bill, let's say the center only approves the budget for 40,000 people. So those remaining 50,000 people, their budget will have to come from the state government, Bihar in this case.
Yes, and this is a very, as a journalist, we all look at where things will go in a specific policy. I suspect that if it is going to be like this, then you are likely to find that with the kind of very fractious politics that we see, where we already have the central government repeatedly calling for a double engine ki sarkar, that you have the same government in the center and the state, and that there will be benefits as a result of that. It is not difficult to conceive that if the government in the center is unhappy with the state government, which is ruled by another party, and there is distress, if enough money is not allocated, you are just turning the screws on that distress, because either the state government will have to shell more. If it doesn't, then there is more distress on the ground. And you can always say that if only you had the right government, you could get more allocation. So, those kind of problems may arise in the future with this kind of system. And with the kind of fractious politics that we've seen, every election we see that argument. And I think a lot of people have said that, because we are such a polarized country right now, a lot of people who do not agree with the Congress's view on NREGA, the argument is that, well, if a state government is so bothered, why don't they, pay more, And on the face of it, it looks very fine. But you have to understand that in terms of financial matters, in terms of taxation power, in terms of that kind of financial resources with the government, it's the center which is really powerful in this country. We are very unitary in how the center controls the finances in this country. This is not like the United States, where the states have very separate set of powers and they have complete sway over the resources. Here, the center has complete sway of the resources. In fact, the GST was the last bit, where states had their own control, but now that has also been kept under GST Council. So there are very little resources that states really can say, okay, we have the resources to raise taxation or create revenue for us. So this is a very salient point, whether a dominant entity in the union is then asking the entities which are weaker in terms of financial resources to handle the burden for the poorest sections of the society. So that's the anomaly part in this.
Yeah, and just to mention that the fund sharing pattern between the center and the state governments will be 90-10 for the northeastern states, Himalayan states, and union territories without a legislature, and 60-40 for all other states and union territories. But that the other major departure that this bill makes from NREGA is that this employment guarantee scheme will be paused during the peak agricultural season. Talk about some of the implications that come to your mind regarding this.
So this, I thought, was a particularly stinging part of the new bill, because, it seems like an innocuous suggestion, but understand what is happening, the macroeconomic implication of this. When you pause NREGA for 60 days, then over those 60 days, the floor for wages for agricultural labor will just fall. Because while one of the reasons why NREGA was so effective in ensuring that the poor do not get distressed and they don't have to resort to distress migration or running away to some other job, is that it would provide a basic minimum wage rate. If suppose a person can get 150 rupees, for argument's sake, doing something on a NREGA work site during the agriculture season, landed farmer or landlord cannot employ that NREGA worker for anything less than 150 rupees. But by pausing this program, you are basically taking away that security that the poorest had, the landless laborers had. And now that a rich farmer can actually employ that landless laborer for any amount, like could be 35 rupees, could be 50 rupees, could be 100 rupees. Anything less than 150 will go, because that person, that landless laborer, has no other avenue apart from saying that, okay, that person then goes to the city, migrates and finds something else, that because, in 50 rupees, he will not be able to survive. So this is a stinging bit.
And can you talk about what implications this would have on a macro level? How exactly will it change things?
So it will have widespread macroeconomic implications. One, in agriculture, costs will come down. So agriculture prices hopefully will come down. You and I will see perhaps lower food inflation, right? If those landless laborers rush to the cities, they might be willing to work for, the city owners, the manufacturing guys, the rich businessmen. They will also know that there is no 150 rupees they can go back to. So they can also employ them at 75 maybe instead of 35 the landed gentry was doing in the villages. And that would mean that labor would be available at a cheaper price during that period. And again, it will have a positive impact on inflation. Inflation would be lower. All of us would get the benefits out of lower inflation, but it would all come at the cost of the welfare of the weakest sections of India, who do not have any skill set, who have no wherewithal to deal with the adversity, and smack at the time when they needed the floor for their wages, that support has been taken away or will be taken away when this becomes an act.
And Udit, how would you say this bill aligns with how this government under PM Modi has viewed MGNREGA in the past? And how does it align with their overall economic vision?
So I think this is a very important thing to understand, that Mr. Modi never actually believed in the vision of NREGA or the thought process behind it. And he has said this as soon as he became the Prime Minister, that I will keep the scheme running as a monument of Congress's failed economic policies. And to be sure, NREGA's idea was that if the economy is doing well, then the demand in NREGA would fall, right? And if the economy is not doing well, then only the NREGA demand will go up. So it is true that if NREGA continues and there's demand for NREGA work, that basically is an argument, a proof that the economy is not doing that well. Otherwise, why are these people asking for a job at the bare minimum wages? So at one level, what Mr. Modi is doing, his promise of minimum government, maximum governance, rollback of the state, all of this actually fits in. And it's a very honest thing that he has done. And that should be, recognized, that it has actually taken 11 years. But, at long last, he has actually wants to repeal what he doesn't actually believe in. And today, a lot of people might deny that, this repeal is a bad idea. But the government is absolutely justified. It wins elections on a certain agenda. And this was one of the very clear things, that this is a politics of dole. This policy is not of any use. It's holding back India's growth. We have cheap labor, surplus cheap labor. Why don't we use that? A lot of industrialists have over time openly and quietly demanded that NREGA is holding back, it increases costs for them. It's holding back everything. It's holding back entrepreneurship. There is not enough, in a manner of speaking, enough distress for labor to sort of go ahead with the industrial development that we wanted. So with labor laws changing, with NREGA being repealed, we move ahead finally to that other vision of a policy vision of what Mr. Modi wanted or what BJP wanted. So we have, for a while, there has been this confusion, and at one level, rather duplicitous, that you run a policy which was done by a previous government, although you don't believe in it. So it is a good thing that they have actually taken the decision. As reporters, as journalists, it's always curious to see where this next phase will take us. But per se, there is nothing illegal or incorrect in a democratic government taking that decision. It has a different vision, so it should implement that.
And next, we shift our focus to Delhi government's attempts to curb air pollution. On Monday, during the last leg of his India tour, global football superstar Lionel Messi was in Delhi at the Arun Jaitley Stadium, where thousands of fans had gathered to catch a glimpse of the Argentine legend. During the event, when Delhi Chief Minister Rekha Gupta arrived on the stage to join Messi, the crowd began chanting AQI repeatedly. Now the chants continued for as long as Gupta was at the stadium, and she was even booed on her way out. This came on a day when Delhi's air quality index remained in the severe category for the third consecutive day, and the crowd's reaction reflected a growing public frustration over air pollution and the demand for stronger government action to address the problem. Now, in an effort to tackle the problem, the Delhi government has taken a decision to bar non-BS6 private vehicles registered outside the capital from entering the city. Considering that vehicular emissions are one of the biggest and most stubborn contributors to air pollution in the region. The BS6 or Bharat Stage 6 emission standard has been mandatory for all new vehicle sales and registrations since 1st April 2020, meaning vehicles registered before this date would be affected by the ban. But vehicles like CNG, LNG and electric will be exempted. To learn more about this new regulation and how it is going to impact the city's air quality, we are joined by the Indian Express's Sophiya Mathew. Sophiya, can you begin by telling us about the current state of pollution in Delhi? How bad is it?
Niharika, so the pollution levels are very bad to an extent that the center has imposed the highest set of anti-pollution measures, which is the stage 4 of the graded response action plan in the city in Delhi NCR. And this is because the air quality since December 13, that is at least for the last 5 days, has been extremely bad. And the air quality levels have ranged as high as like crossing 427 and reaching 461. So this is like a severe plus category for the capital, and these are levels which are extremely hazardous for people even without any ailments or any medical history. And the CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board, has identified these levels to be very hazardous for human health. And even we have found that AQI stations have maxed out at 500 at these levels. So these are extremely hazardous levels, and this is the highest we have seen so far this season.
And tell us about the new regulation regarding the non-BS6 vehicles, and what is the reason behind banning them particularly?
So non-BS6 vehicles are highly polluting, and this is because we have several studies in the capital that have shown the vehicular pollution to be the top contributor in terms of PM 2.5. And also we know that vehicles, so when it comes to, all these Bharat stage engine standards, so vehicles which are non-BS6 are essentially old vehicles. In all over India, across India, BS6 was introduced in 2017, and which is cleaner compared to all the previous BS4, BS3, and all the pre-BS6 vehicles. And this is because it emits very low pollutants compared to the previous pre-BS6 standards. And especially when it comes to talking about the pollutants, we know that vehicle emissions cause nitrogen oxides, sulfur dioxides, and VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, all of these to be released in the atmosphere. Now, what happens is these highly toxic pollutants react in the atmosphere at a secondary level. So, and these lead to the formation of secondary pollutants, which is a very important part of the smog and everything that we observe in the winter pollution season. So these are some of the highly toxic pollutants that is caused due to vehicles alone.
And Sophiya, you write that vehicular emissions are one of the biggest contributing factors to pollution. So why is that?
So Delhi has a very high level of, ownership. Essentially, that means the number of registered vehicles, private vehicles per person is very high compared to other cities combined, like Maharashtra, Mumbai and Bangalore, all of these combined. It still stands to be the highest. And also we know that the number of polluting vehicles, which is BS3 or older vehicles, is very high. At least 37% of the entire vehicles in NCR belongs to BS3 or below standards. Then we know that these vehicles, especially these pre-BS3 vehicles, are highly contributing to the pollution levels. And this is because these emit, 31 times at least more particulate matter and at least a dozen times more nitrogen oxides. Even carbon monoxide is at least 5 times more. So these vehicles are very, very polluting compared to the latest emission standards, which is comparatively cleaner, the BS6 ones. And secondly, there's a lot of enforcement that's still required for all of these old vehicles or end-of-life vehicles to be, actually phased out. Then thirdly, the public infrastructure, public transportation is not adequate to actually give an incentive to people to, give away or scrap their old private vehicle.
Right. And Sophia, given the current severe situation, what are some of the solutions that were suggested by the experts that you spoke to, and what do they make of this ban?
So one of the experts, Sunil Dahiya, who is a lead environmental analyst and founder of a think tank called EnviroCatalyst, he had said that there is a need to look into the scrappage policy as well. So ideally, when we introduce these stringent measures like not allowing pre-BS6 or non-BS6 compliant vehicles to enter Delhi and all of that. So he said, along with this, the scrappage policy needs to be strengthened. If there's no proper utilization of the scrappage policy and there's no proper strengthening of the public transportation system, both of them happening parallelly, then he said ki these restrictions are then not useful at all. Secondly, a senior associate professor at Delhi Technological University, Ajeevika Misra, he has done several studies on vehicular pollution. In a recent study which he led, he found that mileage is also one important concern. So our existing policies actually are focused on the age of the vehicle. So it's not just the age you were saying. There could be vehicles which are, like, for example, buses that are recently bought or which are BS6. But these buses have traveled extensively. Perhaps they are running around for 12 hours a day or something like that. Like the use or the mileage of the vehicle is very high. Then the wear and tear and the emissions of the vehicle would also be very high. And there was also one unique suggestion that was given by Bharati Chaturvedi of Chintan environmental group. She was saying that there has to be a complete, restrictions on social gatherings or big events, because these events cause a lot of traffic congestion. So these need to be avoided, especially during pollution seasons. So ideally, it doesn't mean that we're going into a lockdown situation, but certainly our policies and our actions should include elements of lockdown, because we have reached at that level, is what she was saying.
Also, what are some of the other measures that are being taken by the government to curb pollution?
So the government has claimed that it's taking several steps. The Delhi Environment Minister Manjinder Singh Sirsa in a press conference said on Tuesday that they are going to introduce a lot more number of electric buses, and secondly, they have increased the rate of waste processing at the landfill sites. Thirdly, they also said there's a focus on enhancing the green cover in the city, and they're trying to introduce dense forests as well with the help by undertaking plantations and all. Then there are also, the Delhi government has recently identified around 62 traffic congestion points. So these are areas where more oversight is required, and he's also said that these pollution hotspots are being, tracked and more extensively now by officers, and they're trying to ensure that there's no violations of, at construction sites, and all the measures taken under GRAP are also strictly being followed. Apart from these, the tandoor has also been banned, and because these cause pollution. So then they have said that they have intensified the use of anti-smog guns, mechanical road sweepers, and all of that for dust suppression.
And finally, we talk about the film Homebound, directed by Neeraj Ghewan and executive produced by Oscar winner Martin Scorsese, which has now been shortlisted for the Best International Feature Film category at the 98th Academy Awards. The film, which stars Ishant Khattar and Vishal Jethwa, was announced as one of the 15 films on the shortlist yesterday after competing with 86 official entries from around the world. Homebound is inspired by a true incident and follows childhood friends Shoaib and Chandan, a Muslim and a Dalit migrant worker from an Uttar Pradesh village. The film draws from Bharat Peer's 2020 New York Times article on migrant workers during the COVID-19 lockdown. Now, making it to the shortlist is considered a major achievement, especially in the Best International Feature category. Unlike other Oscar categories where only members from the specific branches vote, Academy members voting in this category are required to watch all shortlisted films before opting in. This makes the competition both intense and wide-ranging, with each film representing its country's official submission. It is also worth noting that the shortlist is not the final stage. From here, the Academy members will vote again to narrow the field further, and only a small number of these films will eventually make it to the final list of nominees announced later. So far, only 3 Indian films have received the final nomination: Mother India in 1957, Salaam Bombay in 1988, and Lagan in 2001. Reacting to the milestone, producer Karan Johar shared his excitement on social media, calling the film's journey deeply overwhelming. Ghewan also thanked the audience worldwide for their support. Here's him talking about the process of making it.
The writing took longer than shooting or creating any of it because I was writing myself for the first time. And also you're writing something, such a big task of actually adapting a story that has been written by Bharat Peer, no less. And from what I took from that story was that, okay, there is a germ of an idea and there's a great story there, but the whole world had to be created around it. And I thought one of the ways that I would go about was that, and I thought, world over we see that marginalized identities are always spoken in numbers, and especially in urban India, where we speak of them in numbers because it makes it easier to talk about it. There is this slight condescending gaze towards it because we feel that this many number of migrants have walked, this many number of Dalits have been gone through atrocity. So it takes away the accountability of it, So I felt that what if we humanize these people? And we pick up 2 people from these statistics, deep dive into their world, go to their homes, see what they eat, see what they feel, see what they aspire for, see how their dreams get shattered, how do they build their life back on, and what makes them leave their homes and travel all the way to their cities.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargav and me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.